Hello everyone and welcome to the Tavern. Today we are looking at the final episode of Season 1 of X-Men 97. I do recommend watching the episode before you see my review. I will be talking about a lot of stuff, and even though I'm going to keep the spoilers to a minimum, there's some great moments that really need to be seen. It really makes me wish every episode of the series could be as good as this one. Also bear in mind that after I'm done with the main review, I will also bring up my feelings on the series as a whole and a spoiler section dedicated to all the teases for Season 2. All that being said, let's get started. We pick up exactly where the previous episode left off. We have Magneto and Xavier discussing their points of view in the mental realm, and Charles forcing Magneto to put the world back the way it was. This will lead to an entire discussion between Magneto and Xavier afterward, as Xavier tries to rebuild Magneto's mind, or else they will both die. In the physical world, we have the battle against Bastion continuing, with him being quite the threat, and Mr. Sinister using his manipulations to mess with Cable. It always goes to that rule in X-Men, no matter how bad things get, they can always get worse, and the struggle and battle against Bastion and Mr. Sinister definitely makes things worse. Meanwhile, the X-Men and Asteroid M are trying to figure out what to do next, as the fight between everybody has come to an end after the removal of the adamantium from Wolverine's body, and Charles and Eric being completely zonked out due to the mental battle they're having. This, of course, leads to final boss version Bastion, and the X-Men in Asteroid M having to fight him as he is planning to drop Asteroid M on Earth to cause an extinction event. We get to see the X-Men showing off their powers and their teamwork while taking on the insurmountable threat that is Final Form Bastion. We have an intense ending, and of course, a lot of new plot threads that are being introduced to tease what will happen in Season 2. As for themes, say it with me, family. Family always comes up, but this one does it so well. Not only do you have the Xavier and Magneto discussion, that feeling of being brothers who have been fighting for so long and needing to kind of just remember what is more important. Cyclops and Jean Grey having moments with Cable, and we have the X-Men themselves coming together as a family to try to save the world. It's really well done. You get different points of view, different types of family, and it really, really comes together to create a wonderful mosaic of theme. In addition to that, we have a whole discussion on self-sacrifice. Not only do we have the characters making a choice to fight rather than to stand idly by and let the world end, but we also have that point of how far are you willing to push yourself in order to win. We get this between Charles and Eric, we get this between Bastion and the mutants, and we get this with the X-Men themselves facing the great calamities that come near the end of the show. It's really well handled, and some of the moments will make you feel emotional, especially if you've become connected to these characters, as I and many other fans of this series have. Overall, the themes are well handled in this episode, and it really feels like we're trying to tie up a lot of the ideas that were brought up throughout the series with a nice bow prior to moving on to new and bigger challenges. The character side of things is incredibly well handled. First, let's talk about the man himself, Professor Charles Xavier. The professor gets to do what the professor does best, give speeches. And he does a great job here while he's giving a very emotional speech to Eric. Not only on the point of trying to convince him to let go of the damage he's done to the world, but to also try to overcome his own internal pain so that he can move forward in life. In addition to that, the discussion about family and about how Xavier sees Magneto as a brother really, really comes through. The actor does an amazing job really making that connection and giving it the pathos it really deserves. Magneto is also an interesting one, because we see him in different states of mentality. We see a flashback, sort of, to the younger versions of Xavier and Magneto when they first revealed their powers to each other. We also see Magneto standing and saying, "No, I will not forgive humanity for the evil they've done." We see him as a broken man The actor does a great job showing all these different time periods and mental states of the character. In addition to that, it's just great seeing Magneto show the layers that make him one of the most interesting characters in all of X-Men. Cyclops gets some focus here as well. We have some great moments of him fighting back against Bastion. We have great moments of him leading the team, of making really interesting decisions that have a better result than what would have happened under someone else's leadership. We get to see the leader Cyclops that we all love. Well, those who read the comics, especially the 80s and 90s eras. If you've just watched X-Men 92, he's the whiny leader man, and most people don't like him that much, because X-Men 92 kind of did Cyclops dirty, in my opinion. We also get to see him open his heart to Cable, which is a great little moment, and it's nice seeing Cyclops be the best version of the character he can be. Finally, I want to bring up Jean Grey just a little bit, because we've seen this really crazy arc with her throughout the story, especially when we were with Madeline in the beginning, and then we were with Jean, and Jean trying to figure out kind of who she is. We get her utilizing her powers to fight back against Bastion and Sinister, which is really, really well done, and we see her being supportive of her husband, which is really nice. I think they've done a good job with Jean Grey, especially giving her more of that personality and that complexity that makes her an interesting character in the comics, as opposed to the more plain character she was in the original series. When it comes to audio, we have some interesting and memorable background music, as they use choral voices in order to do the X-Men theme, but in like a dramatic, epic style that's designed to really evoke the emotions you're feeling throughout the episode. It's incredibly well handled, it's a great track, and I'm glad they saved the best for last. In addition to that, we have some good writing, with Xavier's speeches, and especially Cyclops' goodbye speech to Cable, which is really, really good. It is clear they put a lot of effort into making this a great episode, a very memorable episode, and the audio work really emphasizes the heavy emotions that are going on during this final battle. Once again, the visuals are really well done. The action scenes are amazing. You get some cool fights with Bastion throughout this episode, but then you also get other visuals inside the mental world of Magneto. We have some cool looking stuff when Asteroid M is starting to fall through the atmosphere. We even get some great use of shading and lighting when we're watching President Kelly have to make the choice as to whether or not to fire missiles at Asteroid M in order to save the planet, and what potential negatives might come from blowing up a big rock in the sky. And even the visuals we see once we get to the spoilers I'm not going to talk about just yet that are also really well done. Overall, the visuals in this episode can really show what they can do when they really want to make an impact on the viewer. My last time I get to talk about children's television standards. We have some language, the use of damn, the word suicide probably wouldn't be allowed. There is some scary imagery when it comes to Bastion and when it comes to Mr. Sinister, so that may have had to have been toned down in the 90s, but other than that, I think it's actually a well done episode that probably wouldn't have received too much censorship back in the day. I am so glad that this episode was good. I was afraid that we'd have a really weak finale. It felt like there was a lot of plot threads that just wouldn't get tied up, and yet somehow they pulled it off. And it was one of the most enjoyable episodes of the entire series. That being said, I'm still worried about Season 2. If we've lost the head writer, we have no idea what's going to happen of Season 2. From what I've seen online, he did work on some of the Season 2 episodes, so hopefully those aren't going to be edited to hell or completely manipulated into becoming weaker versions of what they could be, because what we're being introduced to in the tail end of this episode really could make for some interesting storytelling if done right. Hopefully, the rest of the staff can carry the torch and make Season 2 excellent. If it isn't obvious already, I really liked this episode. It's a very strong finale, and I am so grateful that the team actually did a great job, despite the fact that this last little arc has been taking parts and pieces of different events and kind of cramming them together in weird ways. My final verdict for episode 10, a 5 out of 5. This is what this show should be. It has memorable music, dramatic moments, you have great interpersonal conflicts going alongside great combat scenes, with stakes that actually mean something. I really do wish more of the episodes in this show could have been as good as this episode. Now that we've made it to the end of the series, I can also give my final verdict for the series. While the average score is not looking that great, because the weaker episodes do hurt the overall score, my personal score for the series is a bit higher than the average. My final verdict for X-Men 97 Season 1, 4 out of 5. The series does have some flaws. It does get hurt in the storytelling because it rushes through stories that it really should not have rushed through. There's some great stories that could have been two-parters and it would have been excellent, and it feels like they wanted to rush through certain stories so they could get to this crazy finale. In addition to that, the acting in the early episodes and the animation in the early episodes is kind of rough. It really seems like it took a while for the actors to really get the vibe of their characters throughout the course of the series. More than that, you can tell that the later episodes had better use of the budget than the earlier episodes. From about the halfway point of the show, I've had almost no complaints about the visuals, while those early episodes always seem to be a bit weaker. Those little flaws really keep this show from being a 5 out of 5 series. But the whole is greater than the sum of the parts. When you look upon the gestalt of this whole season, all the strengths of the good episodes outweigh the weaknesses of the bad ones. Alright, I said I'd have some bonus spoiler time, so here it is. The ending has a lot of things we're going to have to kind of discuss here. It will definitely be leading to some story points, most of which I predicted, but some of which I didn't. And I'd point out that one of the major plot points I didn't actually predict in my videos. I predicted it while discussing X-Men on one of my game streams. So first off, I called it, we're going to get the adventures of Cyclops and Phoenix. That's great. I think you could really do that in 1 or 2 episodes, and it would be fairly enjoyable. Or they could make it a side plot of multiple episodes, for the first half of the season or something, before Jean and Scott return to the present time. In addition to that, we have another group of X-Men brought back to the past with a young version of Apocalypse. That could be interesting. I'm not quite sure where they want to go with this, but it seems to be pretty obvious that Apocalypse is going to be a big part of Season 2. We also get a brief reference to Graydon Creed. What makes this weird to me is that his assassination is more or less what leads to Operation Zero Tolerance. So to introduce him after introducing Operation Zero Tolerance is a little weird in my mind, and I'm not quite sure what they're going to do with him beyond reenacting the assassination story and maybe using that to lead into some other event. Again, this is part of that mess of just twisting and turning the story into weird knots, and I'm not really confident this is a good idea. I think they could have just skipped Graydon Creed completely, unless they want to, for some reason, do a proper telling of Operation Zero Tolerance, which I would appreciate. The stinger implies something that I predicted, but unfortunately I only brought it up in one of my game streams, and I didn't bring it up in any of these videos. Next season, we will get Horseman Gambit. It's going to happen, and I'm looking forward to seeing how they do the Horsemen of that era, because, yeah, this is going to be a thing, and it's probably going to be our big finale for Season 2, when the X-Men have to face off against Apocalypse and his new 4 Horsemen. Hopefully they make this really epic, because it felt in the original series that they kind of half-assed the original Apocalypse and his 4 Horsemen storyline from X-Factor. All the events that have occurred also mean we're probably not going to get Onslaught, and I am perfectly fine with that, as I'm not the biggest fan of the Onslaught storyline. I think all it really did was cause more problems for Marvel continuity, and frankly, skipping it is probably the better choice. Finally, we don't really know what happens to Wolverine at the end, but if they are going to follow the comics, he has something of a recovery arc at this point, getting used to his new body without the adamantium claws. I am curious to see what they're going to do with Wolverine and where he's going to end up in terms of the timeline. Bottom line is, they could make Season 2 amazing, but there's also a lot of ways they could really screw it up. Beyond that, I'd like to give a big thank you to all of you who've been with me through this journey. We got to see them put the effort into making this a good show, and I'm glad we got to see it together. Thank you, dear viewer. I will be reviewing Season 2 when it comes around, and I hope you join me again for Season 2. Until then, please like, subscribe, and share this video with all your favorite X-Men friends. I might be doing a few more superhero-themed cartoon reviews, so keep your eyes open because it'll be an interesting summer on my channel. Until next time, thank you for watching, and I'll see you at the tavern, bub.